We're back at 8:37 with the question many couples struggle with: how many children should you have? Well, an op-ed in this weekend's New York Times is one of the paper's most emailed stories this morning, written by Lauren Sandler, an only child herself and the mother of one. It explores some of the stereotypes of raising siblingless kids. We will talk to her in a moment, but first, her story.
Here, can you pull this one out? I have a 5-year-old daughter. She's a lot of fun. She's my only child, at least for now. Are you following the line? We're really happy, the three of us. I mean, I can imagine wanting to have another child. I love babies, and I know that she would be an incredible older sibling. But the three of us have a very special relationship. We're very close. I really loved my only childhood. I got to have my parents' attention without them having to divide it too much. As parents, they were really engaged with me. I don't recall wishing that I had a sibling when I was a kid. When I was an adolescent, I sometimes wanted a teammate. And now that I'm older and I think about confronting my parents aging alone, that's a little bit of a stress.
Hugo had helped Isabel.
My mother's feeling was that in order to be a really good mother, she had to be a really happy person. And for her, these were choices that made sense to her. And I think that as parents, and especially mothers, we lose sight of our own happiness so easily. And it's something that I'm really trying to protect, not just for myself, but also for my whole family. Honestly, I think the only way that you can make those choices is to know yourself and to know your kid and to listen to your heart.
And Lauren Sandler is with us now. Her new book is called One and Only: The Freedom of Having an Only Child and the Joy of Being One. Lauren, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning.
This is such an interesting topic. And the first question I had was, do you think there still is kind of that stigma about being an only child or having just one child?
Totally. It's like the only stereotype that survived political correctness. And what's interesting is how erroneous it is. There are so many studies, hundreds of them, done over decades, that show that only children really aren't that different than anyone else.
The rap always was, maybe they're lonely, and some said they're more self-absorbed. I guess the theory being that they don't have to compete for their parents' attention with siblings.
That's true, that we don't have to compete, but all of the studies show that we aren't any lonelier. In fact, only children tend to have a very strong primary relationship with themselves, and so that solitude can be very strengthening.
One of the things I know you did was look at the research that's out there, and if anything, it seemed to me what you found is that the research demonstrates there may even be a benefit to being an only child in terms of an array of different attributes.
Well, statistically, only children tend to be higher achieving and have higher intelligence. But more so, I think that the issue is really that we think that there's something wrong with only children. It's not that there's something wrong with only children and then there's also an asset. It's that there's nothing wrong and then there are some benefits too.
Well, there's a flip side of this too, because so far we've been talking about the effect on the child. You also talk about the effect on parents. And what you write in the op-ed is that a lot of parents feel guilty for only having one child.
It's true. I mean, the culture tells you to. You know, strangers will say to me, oh, you wouldn't do that to your child. But I actually think it's wonderful. We have a very happy family, and I'm a very happy mother for it.
You make kind of an array of arguments on behalf of having just one child. One of them is economic, and it is true that children are expensive, and by default, more children are more expensive.
It's true.
Okay, now,
So what did you find in terms of the difference that it made in terms of, I guess, parental happiness to only have one child in terms of that economic burden?
Well, in terms of economic burden, I mean, that's everyone's personal choice, you know, so this all is, of course. So children are very expensive, and if you want to have them, you'll make it work. But if you don't want to have them, I just want people to know that it's okay.
Well, you explore all facets of this, and there are downsides too. And one of the things I thought was most poignant was you writing about the notion of losing your parents one day. And when you are an only child, there is that potential that you lose your parents and you're alone in the world.
It's true. I mean, I'll have my husband and my daughter and very dear friends who are like family, but there does seem to be an unreconcilable sort of existential hole in your heart when you think about that. But to me, it's a question of whether that is a reason enough to have another kid. And for my family, I don't think it is. For others, it might be.
So what's your message to parents who are thinking about this, who maybe feel those societal pressures to have an additional child?
I would say ignore society, pay attention to the research, but most of all, just pay attention to your heart and do what you want for your own freedom in your life and your family.
Once again, it's an interesting conversation to have. Thank you, Lauren. The book is called One and Only.